Everyone has something to share, in either wisdom, story, or logic, and it's clearly amazing to hear all the differing missing links discovered by people, unique to their own journeys, and in how they have come to discover them. Together, we can help to build a bigger picture for a better future, for a brighter tomorrow. Let's stand united. Let's remove the veils, and let's create a new world together. Are you that missing link? Join Jesse Hale on the Missing Link Talk Show as he helps to unveil the mystery through the unique wisdom and store of others.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome everybody here back to the Missing Link. Today we're excited to talk to two people from Rescue the Fosters, which is founded by Sylvia Beachy and Kajal Emmett, KK. How are you both doing today, ladies?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Can you hear me, Sylvia? She could hear me before. I'm not sure what's going on. Can you hear me? Can you? Maybe we'll just bounce her out, and maybe she can try coming back in. So maybe we can start off with you, KK. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your education. Well, you were in the foster system. Tell us a little bit about your story, especially if people are hearing you here for the first time today.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kajal, but I go by KK, and I'm gonna basically backtrack and give y'all like a backstory about me. So for me, I was actually an orphan in New Delhi, India. So I actually don't know my biological parents, and I was found on the streets by a police officer in India, and he took me into an orphanage. And so that's basically where my journey began, was in India. And then eventually, at the age of 4, from what I can remember, is I got adopted by an American family, and then I came to America. And ever since from 4 to 15, I was with my adopted family. And then basically abuse started happening in my household with my brother and I. And that's basically what led up to me being in foster care because of the abuse. And ever since then, that's really when I first heard of, being in the foster care system. So my first placement was actually at a foster home, and the house it was okay. I mean, it wasn't bad. I mean, there were some things that had to adjust from, like being with people I'd never been around before. And so that was kind of something new. And at first, when I was in the first group of foster home, I kind of really just wanted to go home. I didn't really want to be in foster care. But then eventually, as I was in foster care, it just ended up leading me to not wanting to go home at all. Then I went to a group home where it was basically a normal facility, like normal house for girls that were not pregnant, and then the other houses were for girls that were pregnant, and then the last house was with boys. So that was kind of interesting how that worked. Of course I did see a lot of like running away, you know um just different things happening. I actually ran away too before I got into my last group home, before I met Sylvia. And that was the day I was supposed to come to the new placement, but I didn't want to go because I actually liked the original placement I was at before I was about to go to my new one. And then my last group home, which was of course where I met Sylvia, that is where I really saw the most, like girls getting pimped out, girls liking each other, fights, just different things. That was really my first time seeing all of the corruption really happening, and finding out that you know a lot of the workers, they're just doing it for the money. They're not really there to really care for us and advocate for us. It was more of like an agenda for them. And now, I mean, I did go to college I've been taking a break and stuff. I was going to school for exercise science, but right now I've just been focused on the nonprofit with helping with foster care and being an advocate for the children.
Wow, that's quite the story. And Sylvia, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself, background, education. What do you got you into helping with the foster system? Maybe what part of the world you grew up in, what part of the world you're in now. Anything that you'd like the audience to know, especially if they're hearing you here for the first time.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having us on. So I'm in Georgia, and I was actually a travel agent when I started mentoring one of the youth from Elks Aidmore group home. And I would just mentor for 2 hours a week. And that's where you basically go spend time with the child and you take them out into the community. And I would take her to lunch and dinner or shopping or to the movies. And then a position for staff opened up. And I really enjoyed working with kids. So I applied and I got the job. So I had I didn't realize what the foster system was like until I started working there. And then the way that the shift works is that it was a 72-hour shift. So my shift started on a Friday at 3 and ended on Monday at 3, which I kind of enjoyed because you got to know the kids a lot better. And the group home was 12 years and up. And when I started, it was only a few kids at the time. It was like 4, I think it was like 4 kids. But as time went on, you know, they decided to change it, and that was because of the money that was involved. Is basically the kids that have the most issues, like if they're a runaway, if they self-harm, if they're defiant, if they're sexually abused, if they're sex trafficked, they're going to need more care, right? So you get more money. So they changed it from a base facility to a MWO facility. And that's where you have your gang affiliations and things like that. So a lot more does happen. And that's where you have fights and you have fights on the daily, runaways. And what KK was saying was that some of the girls would get the other girls to run away with them, and then they would pimp them out. And that's how pimping is done. And then gang affiliations, I knew nothing about gang. I knew nothing about the Bloods or the Crips. You know, I came from a stable environment, and I had no idea. And that world is all about the gang because kids, they are so longing for somebody to take them under their wings, and that's exactly what the gang members do, right? They're like, come and we'll be your family, we'll back you up, we'll be your brother or your sister, and that's how they get the kids. So I worked at the group home for about 2 years. And then went over to case managing. I was a case manager for 2 years. While I was working at the group home as a staff member, I went to the University of Georgia and obtained my bachelor's in social work. And then I went over to case managing. And that, you know, I thought that the group home life would prepare me for the case managing position, but what I was not prepared at all. I mean, it was completely different. So I saw corruption on both sides, but it was different corruption, right? And then after I left case managing, I was a transporter, a parent aide, a behavior aide. But in all of these positions, I could not advocate for the child. And I mean, I do have a lot of stories, so we can go into more of that, which is why I left the system, was basically because of the cover-ups, and you're constantly having to make moral decisions for these kids. And I was afraid something was going to happen to one of the children and I would be the blame. So that's my experience in the foster system, and the reason why we started Rescue the Fosters was because the children don't have a voice in care. They come to you and they tell you what's going on, but when, as a caseworker, when I would take it to my director, the kids were considered liars. And that's something that we really need to change. The stigma is that the foster kids are just lying on the foster parents. When if you actually start doing the research on what they're saying, then you find out that they're telling the truth. So we advocate for foster youth in the system. The other thing we do is once the child ages out of the system, we help them obtain like job, interview skills, clothing for interview, resume writing, obtain housing, things like that, because when they age out, they are just dropped on the streets. And I don't know if the majority of people realize this, that the majority of our youth, after they turn 18 or 21, depending on what they choose, they are dropped on the streets. And that's because there's no more funds, right? So we kind of help them stay off the streets. And then the other thing we do is we help parents that are navigating the system. We advocate for them. And this is where we're receiving the most calls from parents that have been had CPS at their door and they're fighting for their kids. So that's where we've had most of the calls, and most of my cases are right now, is helping parents stay together, basically.
So what you're telling me is that in a lot of the cases in foster care, so you have a foster parent that decides to take in a foster child, and say they take the kid in at 12 or 13, and they have that child for 8 or 9 years. As soon as that child turns 18, or depending on what state, 21, but as soon as that child turns of age, there's no more funding, so they usually just kick the kid out?
Well, so the way that the system works, okay, and this is something else that people don't realize, like KK was adopted, right? But it wasn't working out at her adoptive family, so they put her back into the foster system. So she was in the foster system until she aged out at the age of 21, because she did stay in the system until 21. Once she aged out at 21, because she's not adopted again, she doesn't have a family, they're like, all right, where do you want me to drop you? Where do you want us to drop you? So that's basically how it works. Now if the kid is adopted and they adjust to that adopted family, then they stay with that adopted family. But if they don't, they go back into the system, and then when they age out at 18 or 21, they're gone.
Do you know what percentage of successful foster children, kind of go into the system and they, find a good family, and there isn't the abuse, there is, a family that warms and welcomes and loves them? Because I hear that it's very low. I hear that a lot of people that foster and the system, like some people believe that, the CPS is almost like a child trafficking. They're taking kids away from families that, probably shouldn't have taken, in some cases, yes, but they put into the system. It's all about money. And then, some of them get, into the sex trade. Some of them get into all kinds of other things that happen by them taking these children away from their birth parents.
Right. I don't know the exact number, but again, you are correct with it being a huge number, because I believe 70% of the calls made to a CPS investigator on a family is unfounded. So you have like a 20% that are actually in the system because there was actual abuse. And the reason that I think that is because as a case manager, we had quotas. So we had quotas on how many kids, we had goals and we had quotas. And and it was based on so if a child was reunited or adopted, we were told that we had to bring in more kids. And the reason for that is Title IV-E funding. I don't know if you've done any research on that.
They have to have
But
so many kids in order to get so many funding, so they actually have to actively go find kids, whether or not they should be taken or not. In more cases than not, they're probably taking the kids because they need to, have enough kids in order to continue on with the funding that they're getting. Is that kind of the...
Yep, that's exactly it. So if the funding is based on the number of children that were in the system the year prior. So say they had 100 kids the year prior, they have to bring in 100 plus kids the next year. Of course, it's not that small of a number. It's more like 400,000. So if you have 400,000 kids in the year before, you're not going to get your funding unless you bring in that many kids the following year. So, and it's a huge pressure on the caseworkers. We were told that if we didn't bring in kids, then we were fired. And they even made up a term. It was celebrate or eliminate. And that was like, we're going to celebrate making money, bringing in kids, reaching our goals, or we're going to eliminate you and you're out of here. And it was a huge pressure, and that's why I was very vocal about it. I didn't think that there should ever be a goal on a child, that we should have less children in care, not more. But yeah, it's a huge pressure on the caseworkers.
Yeah, that's horrific just to even, conceptualize that fact, because ultimately, I know that KK's situation's a little bit different, being left in the streets and things, but in most cases, you would hope that you would try to get counseling for the family that maybe had some issues, that you would try to exhaust every resource possible before removing a child from their birth parents. But does that not seem to be the case from your guys' experience?
Well, I didn't realize it until I started researching. I started researching because there was this pressure of bring in kids, and then there was also cover-ups, on the foster parents. They had different rules for the foster parents than they did for the biological family. So I was getting beat up at work, when things would happen and I would speak up. I was written up. I had about 4 write-ups. They used medical error a lot. All of my write-ups were medical error, and that's basically where you're given psychotropic medication to the foster youth, and you forget to sign in the dosage or something. But what it does is it creates a narrative, right? If I'm getting write-ups, then it's creating a narrative on me. And then I was put on leave twice. The first time was because a foster youth told me that the foster parent put her hands on her, and she didn't like that. She didn't want to leave the foster parent because she did have a good relationship with her. She just didn't want the foster parent to put her hands on her. And the foster parent was very, yeah, this happened. I shouldn't have done it. She didn't lie about it or anything like that, but my supervisor wrote up the incident report that the foster parent was breaking up a fight, and that's why she put her hands on the child. And then she told me not to call it in. If I did call it in, then I was causing the child to lose her placement, and she wasn't going to have a home. And then she told the director and CEO a completely different story. And so I went to my director and I said, that's not what happened. This is what happened. And I don't want my name on this report. I don't want anything to do with this report. And so my director was like, yes, you're right. That shouldn't have happened. That's not right. And then we go into the meeting and they all ambush me. And they say that I heard her wrong, that I was hallucinating, that I was overworked and I was burned out, and I needed to take 3 days off. And so they gave me 3 days off. And when I came back, I refused to work for this supervisor. And I was like, I want nothing. I will not work under her. I will not, so they put me under a different supervisor. But that's basically how they control the worker. They create a narrative, and then they write you up, and then and just like with the hallucination and the burned out, that was all in a report. And it was basically because I refused to falsify documentations and I refused to go along with the falsification. So, and then when you say, if you do go to someone else and say, this is what happened, they'll say, I didn't say that. She's lying. It's just what they do with the kids. They say, I didn't, the kid is lying on the foster parent. And who are you going to believe, right? So what I did was I started recording our meetings because I was so afraid that something was going to happen to a child. They were going to blame me. And I was afraid I would go to jail for something that happened to a child or something. So I started just recording our meetings so that I would have it as a backup for me. So I wish I would have started recording sooner. And I do think that if there are other caseworkers out there, if you can start recording your meetings, because they will make you feel like you're crazy. The gaslighting is insane. And then they'll turn it over. And then they told me I needed to go to therapy. That's where they also do with the parents. They tell them they need to go to therapy. They get a mental diagnosis on them. And then they start giving them psychotropic medication. So I would encourage all workers to start recording your meetings, not to be I didn't know anything about a whistleblower. I just was trying to cover my back. That was it.
So in the instance you were saying that if a family has been reported, for any situation, whether it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, and all these things, right away they'll take the child. But if they hear that same thing coming out of the foster, family, that there is, some kind of physical, sexual neglect, whatever it is, they don't take the child away. They'll actually try to cover up some of this stuff and to continue on and put pressure on the workers to falsify these documents in order to protect the foster families.
Yes, that's exactly what happened with the last case that I quit. The last straw was that they wanted me to cover for a foster parent drinking and driving with kids in the car. And they told me not to call it in. And I was like, I can't do this job anymore. I morally cannot do this job, because if you're taking kids from a biological parent, because that they would take a kid from a biological parent for drinking and driving, right? That's pretty serious. So, but you're going to put it in the foster home and you're going to cover for the foster parent.
That's crazy. Go ahead, KK.
I wanted to basically speak on what she's been talking about. Because a lot of things has came to my mind. I was just letting her finish. But a lot of I want the audience to know that like even the kids in the system are aware of the fact that it is just for the money. Like, oh, we're here for the money. Like the kids will even say that. Is what I mean is they know that they're here just for profit. They know that they're here just for the money and all of that. And they're gonna, and then of course, like she was saying, the social workers or the people that work at the group home, they're gonna say that we're lying when we're not lying. Like, we're fully aware of what's going on, and they think kids don't know any better, but really they do. They're actually smarter than you really think they are, because they can pick up on things real quick. And so I picked up that real quick too. I realized, I was like, because they will try to like make it seem like everything is normal but under the rug and all that, but really in reality, once you start really thinking about it, it's like, no, this is not normal. Like, this is, something is off. And basically, oh goodness, I just lost my train of thought for a second. Man, I was trying to hold on one second.
I think we were talking about how some of the foster parents get protected.
Yes, and I believe that the reason why the social workers and the people that are working for defects and everything, I believe they do that because if they make sure that the foster parent is okay, because if something, the reason why they want you to go along with the going with the false documents and stuff is because they don't want to be liable, and two, because they would take away their funding, if that makes sense. So that's why they would want Sylvia to do that, but Sylvia's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, I know my morals, and we've forgotten our morals in this world. We've forgotten the morals of, even if this is not my kid, I'm still going to do the right thing and take care of them. And that's really what I wanted to say right now.
So do you think that if, like when a foster parent or parents, they get a child, does that child now go once a month to maybe see a counselor to find out if there's any abuse going on, if there's anything horrific? Do they actually monitor the children in the abuse? And then what happens if they do find that there is something going on inside of that home?
I mean, honestly, for me, I'll let her speak. My bad. For me, like, I'll just speak from my experience when I was in, of course, my file was about, sexual abuse and things like that. I was in therapy for that. However, I don't really think it helped too much, because you'll talk and talk and talk, but you'll never really get to the root of the problem. And I believe the reason why they do that is so, like I said, it goes back to the money. Because if for an example, if a regular child goes into therapy, they're gonna go to the root of the problem, right? But when you're in foster care, they're not gonna go root to the problem, because they need their money. They need their funding. So they're gonna keep going on and on and on and on and on. So their money can keep coming in, keep coming in. So it's like, even if you go to therapy, it doesn't really solve anything, at least to me.
Yeah, and I think she brings up a good point, but also they're covering the same way that the caseworkers and case managers do. Now you do have in every field, you have good case managers, you have good counselors, you have good therapists, but it's a system that has been perfected. Like, you have, like, the foster system is not just caseworkers; it's therapists, counselors, behavior aides, parent aides. You have all of these, and that was the other thing that I realized, that was therapy was a hustle. And that's because they would go into the group home, one therapist, they would talk to 10 kids, and they would spend 10 minutes with them, maybe 20 minutes, and then they would bill for an hour. So you got 10 kids, you got 10 hours. That's a good day. It's a job. It's kind of like what she was saying. It's basically a job. So a foster child is going to bring in many different jobs. You have the therapist that they're going to bring in. If they have really bad issues, you got the behavior aide. You have the psychiatrist, because they go straight to the psychiatrist, and then they place them on some type of psychotropic medication once they're diagnosed, and they usually are diagnosed. And then you have your transporters that transport these kids all over the place to visits, to appointments, to medical appointments, sometimes to school. So you're basically creating an income for many people.
How many kids do you think are put on some kind of drugs? Are they all drugged, or are any kids not drugged, or is it just the norm to find faults in these kids, to find something and then to start putting on them on some kind of medications?
Yeah, I'll let KK tell about her experience, but what I noticed, because I was thinking that it would be, you would think that it's just a few kids placed on medication, not the majority. But the majority are placed on medication. If I saw where a kid was not placed on medication, then I was surprised. And the other thing that I noticed is that they diagnosed them with kind of the same diagnosis, and that's oppositional defiant disorder. So that's your kid that's like, you know what, now I'm not going to do this. They have issues at school. But the reason that they're really having issues at school is because they're taken from their family and they're taken from their environment, and they're placed into an unknown environment with strangers. And they're just trying to, they can't focus. They can't focus on a whole day. So then they are placed on psychotropic medication, and then that dosage, they're experimented on, because that the medicine that they put them on may not work for that child. So then they change it, or they change the dosage, or they add a dosage, they add a medication. And the other thing that I noticed was that antidepressants actually make kids more aggressive and more suicidal. So they're placing kids, these kids are having anxiety because they are taken out of their environment. Like, this is what they're doing, is they're traumatizing the child, and then they're creating anxiety or some form of disorder, dissociative disorder or defiant disorder. And then they are experimenting, and it's always usually the same drugs, and I'd have to get you the list of what they are. But it's the same thing that they do with the elderly. They use the same type of drugs, same thing. But it's the majority of kids that go into the system are placed on medication.
KK, did you want to share something?
I happen to be surprisingly one of the few that were not on medication. So, for me, I mean, going back to what she was saying, I mean, of course, each and every single foster kid that is placed in the system, of course, have to go through a diagnosis. Um, and of course, like for me, I was never really into like medication as much. Like, of course, when you're young, like a kid, you take like the normal over the counter stuff. But I don't know, something felt different. Like when you're in foster care, I just, something just felt off in my spirit. Like, yeah, I don't think that this would be a good choice. So, really, for me, I didn't necessarily have to be on medication. One, because I didn't want to. And two, I mean, I didn't really make it seem like I had to be on medication, even though they did diagnose me and tried to put me on medication. I denied it because I know what I believe in, and I don't think I need a medication to one control me and tell me that there's something wrong with me when I know that I'm absolutely fine and healthy.
Good for you. And, it seems like, you have a very kind of a soft personality where you just kind of want to go with the flow. You weren't causing too much trouble. So hence that they didn't feel like they had to force this medication on you.
Yeah, you got it.
Oh yes. No, but I have been I have a, well, I'm not going to share too much stories, but like I know when kids that were in the system, that were in the group home with me, I could tell when they were on medication, when they were not. You could just tell, like when they're on medication, they'll tend to be a little aggressive or not, or they wouldn't eat, or they would sleep all the time. And Yeah.
Wow, this is pretty wild. Do the kids that go into foster care, do they get reunited with the family very often, or is it once you're in the system?
It depends on the caseworker.
Yeah, depends on the
Because I had the most reunifications. I had maybe one or two adoptions, but the majority of mine were reunifications. And that was because I had concerns with the foster homes. And I would be like, all right, what do we need to do to get this child home? Because I feel like they would be more safe at home than they would with this foster parent. And that is the reason that we are able to help families that are coming to us for help, because I do know how to work a case plan to achieve the goal of reunification. And that's what we try to do, is we try to keep families together and keep kids out of the system.
Monica was ask her if she had a lot of people that came to you for advice, like younger friends, because it seems like you have a good head on your shoulder. KK, did people that you noticed come to you for advice and try to get help navigating, especially some of the new people that would come into the homes you were in?
Yes. I actually did mentor one of the girls. I would tell her, like, basically remind her some of her rights in the system, that you're allowed to deny your medication. Like, that is one of your rights. And I think you could deny it 3 times, and then they'll take you off. So I would, like, really try to help her, be there for her, but also, like, had to remind myself, like, I could understand why she's misbehaving and things, because it makes sense. She wants love. She wants, to be cared for, to have nurture. So I would really be there to support her and help her out a lot. So there were some girls that would come and talk to me, and I would mentor them.
Yeah, I have to say, KK was one of the, like you said, she's got that, like, go with the flow. Don't, like, she didn't get in the drama of it. Like, she did kind of walk away from the fights and kind of stay to herself. And she did help some of the other kids, but it was her attitude and her, like, I don't know, she just didn't get, like, caught up in the drama of all of the other kids. Like, she would stay to herself. She did a lot of she used her coping skills too. Like, she would walk. She'd walk and listen to music a lot, things like that. But yeah, she was definitely one of the kids that try to just do the best every day.
So you said, Sylvia, that you actively tried to get the parents, the kids reunited with the parents. You had a lot. You mentioned before that there's a lot of good workers, people getting into this business or this job because they have good intentions. But do you think it's the system that is corrupted? And even though you have good intentions, then someone like yourself that was reuniting, lots of children back with the families, that means it's taking out of their pocket every time you reunite, a child with their family. And then, good people like yourself, they target then write-ups and all these things. Is that because you didn't, you seen the corruption and didn't want to, kind of follow along with that corruption? Like, you have your rights, morals, you're authentic, and you just wanted to do the best that you possibly could and got targeted for it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The average that most caseworkers last in the system is 2 years, and that's where I was. I left at 2 years, and it's because I feel like they do that on purpose. Like, the environment that they create for the employees is very hostile. It's a bullying. They bully you. It's a hostile environment. It's the worst environment I've ever been in. So I think that's on purpose to keep people, because there's a big turnover rate, right? So if you are actually keep on turning over, then your kids are maintained in the system because there's no caseworker working the case plan, right? And just so everyone is aware, the way that every case is done, when a child is placed into care, the parent has 15 months to complete a case plan. If they don't complete the case plan in 15 months, that child goes up for adoption. And that's because of the ASFA, Adoption Safe and Families Act. So what they do is they railroad the parent so that they don't make that 15 months. Then the child goes up for adoption, and then they get more money. So once they go up to adoption, then the state, depending on the state, it's anywhere from $3,000. I've heard all the way up to $14,000 per child. So it's about money.
Yeah, that's horrific. So Angeline is asking, do you have any advice or tips if social services, child protective services came to your door? What kind of advice from the experience that you both have in this system? What's the best way to deal with someone coming because of a complaint or for some reason, somehow they show up at your door? What's your best course of action?
Well, the first thing you do is make sure that they have a court-ordered warrant before you let them in the house. You don't have, like KK said, you have to know your rights. If CPS walks up to your door right now and they don't have a court order, you do not have to let that caseworker in your house. Also record all of your conversations because they will use what you tell them and they will twist it. We do have one, the show we're having tonight is with Jay at CPS Investigates. He actually has a agency where he helps, like say when CPS calls, you call him, he helps you through the first part, and then that way you don't make it, like they don't make it past the door. Keep them out of your door at all costs. If you can afford an attorney, get an attorney and say, here, give the caseworker your attorney's information. But the best thing is to basically keep them out of your house.
So you, and as your own rights, you do not have to let anyone in, no matter if it's the police, no matter if it's the child protective services, social services, unless they actually have a court order that they can show you that it says that they have a right to come in or to take the child or whatever. You do not have to talk to them. You do not. So how does that look? So if someone shows up at the door, yes, we had a concern, we have some questions about the kid, do you just say, well, I don't feel like talking to you, so come back with a court order and send them on the door? Does that make them aggravated to want to maybe want to go get that court order and take your kid now? Like, because if you're just blatant, or do they just like, whoa, like that's these guys know their rights, let's move on to the next house because this one's going to be a difficult one, so they're more likely not to pursue that? Or would they want to pursue it even more? Or I guess would it depend depending on the worker?
It depends on the worker. What I would say is I would like to see the court order, and it has to be signed by a judge, because we had a parent who they showed a paper to, and it looked like a court order, but it wasn't signed by a judge, so it wasn't official. And she let them in, and they took her 6 or 7, I think it's 6 kids. She's actually on TikTok and everything. She just got her kids back. But the thing is that she's like, they fooled me. They made me think that they had a legit warrant. So you just got to look and make sure that it has a judge's signature, that it is a legit paper, because that's another thing that they do. But what I'm finding is that even going through these cases is that they're not following any of these procedures, and the family just didn't know their rights. I've had families tell me that, show me where the caseworker gave them a sticky note, and that's not legal. So truthfully, you just have to know your rights, and what your rights are. You don't want to start an argument. You don't want to start an argument like where you piss the caseworker off, and then she does start harassing you, because that's happened. You can actually send a cease and desist letter to the caseworker. But first of all, just treat them like another person. Like, why are you here? Where did you receive the call from? Where is the warrant? The other thing they do is that they go and see kids at school, and you might not know until your child gets home from school, and then they say, this lady showed up at my house, at school, and spoke to me, and she said she's going to come to the house later. You might get that from your child. So you want to educate your children and say, hey, if somebody comes to the school, you don't talk to strangers. Because kids do not know the concept of time, place, and people, right? They just don't have that. Their brain is still developing. So they say a lot of stuff that is very confusing to the child. So you just want to educate your children as well as know your rights.
So I had my own kind of personal kind of dealings with this. So when I was living in Cancun, Mexico, my best friend had killed himself, and he made me promise if anything ever happened to him that I'd help look out for his family. So he died before his third one was born. And I came back, and they had their kids in and out of foster care and out. They were over 2 years that they were in the system, but I when I came back, they were currently with their in like foster care, and I helped her, took her all to all her meetings, took her everything that she needed to do, and she was able to get the kids back. And I think they were in the system for 2.5 years total, in bits and pieces, the 3 or 4 different times that they were in there. And so we ended up getting this really nice house on a lake, 5,500 square feet. Our backyard was the lake, this big pool, but we had one neighbor on the right side that didn't really like us. And they ended up calling and saying that, I think that they're making drugs in the house or whatever, like a false accusation. So they went to the kids' school to talk to the kids, and then they led them in their questioning in order to get the responses that they wanted. They came into the house with their team. They searched the whole house, and nothing. And there was nothing, but they ended up still taking the kids away. And so apparently, if the kids have been in foster care after 2 years, then it's automatic PGO, permanent guardianship order. And I'm in Canada, so maybe things may be a little different, but probably similar, to the US. But they said it was permanent guardian order, and they said the kids were going to they're taking them for good. Well, I don't take that of people trying to bully me, pressure me, or anything. I didn't stop rattling the cages. I was calling them every day, emailing every day. I was calling the ministers of our province. I was calling the ministers of our country. I was sending emails every single day. I was livid because we didn't do anything wrong, and they ended up coming and taking the kids. And so after about I think it was like 4 months, 3 or 4 months, they ended up just giving the kids back. And I think it was to shut me up. And because, in that instance, they're not supposed to give the kids back because they were in custody for over 2 years. So for me, I rattled enough cages and enough feathers and, made it to the point that they were like, you know what, we need to give these kids back because this guy is not going to stop. And I wouldn't have. And so they ended up giving the kids back, which was a good thing. But I had to fight. Like I didn't stay quiet. Or I made sure that everybody knew how angry I was because again, they used the kids to do an illegal search on the house, assuming that there's some drug lab in the house, but there was nothing. And, but in order to save face, they still took the kids because they couldn't just say, oops, sorry, we thought there was a drug lab. There's nothing here. Sorry, we're not going to take the kids. They ended up still unjustly taking the kids. But like I said, I didn't let them get away with it. And, they ended up giving the kids back.
Yeah, and that's basically, exactly what you did. And if you can get an advocate, we are going to be training advocates because that does help, if you have someone. And this was something else I noticed, was that when you confront them, when you stand up, they back off, because I was very loud, but they treated a lot of my coworkers a lot worse than they did me. So, and I noticed that. I noticed that how when I would speak up, they would back off. So that's all. I'm glad you got them back.
So it's important to know your rights, and then as a parent, you should know the rights because, in most cases, you may not know that this is coming around the corner. So if you know your rights, then, if this ever happens, you could probably deal with them properly, in the right way, opposed to a lot of parents when someone comes at the door, they're freaked out, they're scared, they're timid, they're just okay, we'll do whatever you say. And even though they may agree to things that they could have, said no to, but just because they didn't know their rights and because they were afraid that they may do things, say things, agree to things that they may, not be in their best interest because of that fear.
Yep, exactly. And it is scary. I mean, if you've ever had CPS, and I mean, honestly, anyone can get called on, and it's very scary. You just got to take a deep breath and know your rights and talk to them like they are a person. They have no power over you. And that's the other thing people don't realize, is that a lot of our states, the way that the system is ran, it's ran on nonprofits. It's not even the investigation part is the government agency, but after that, it's not. It's usually a nonprofit, and depending on what state you are in. And why do these people have so much power? Why are we terrified when they come to our door? And it's because of the narrative that has been created that whenever a parent loses their child, they did something wrong. And we automatically assume that they did something wrong. And we really need to change that.
Wow. So, how long have you guys been doing what you guys are doing, advocating for children in foster care? And if someone was, needing some help, needing some guidance, I know I got a lot of your links listed down here,
Yeah,
but
thank you.
how would that work? If someone did need some help or some guidance, how do you guys, because you said you are a nonprofit, so do you help families without charging them, and then you guys get donations in order to help, continue on your work?
Yes, we do not charge, and that's because the majority of families that call me are already, gone through the system for so long, and they're drained, and their finances are drained, and they don't have money. That's the other thing they do, is they drain you of your finances to where you're homeless. So when they call us, we just basically, review the case. We are getting a little bit more busier now. So we've only been started this year, January of 2023. So we are getting a lot more, as people are finding out who we are and they're coming across our podcast, they're reaching out. So sometimes I can't I'm just not that. I need more help, basically. So that's what we're doing, is training up advocates to help, so that we can take more cases. But a lot of times I can give you advice on what to do and how to do it. I've done it. I've done different things. I had one. It was a grandmother that saw a podcast, and she just basically called me up and was like, I just need to talk to you because you make me feel like I'm not crazy, because I've been fighting the system for so long and everybody keeps calling me crazy, like this can't be happening, and it is happening. And she came up with everything. She was like, can you make me some flyers that I can pass out at the courthouse? I'm going to go take these flyers. And KK made up this beautiful flyer, and it was about trafficking. And she went up to the courthouse and she passed them out. And then I sent her the video of Nancy Schaefer. I don't know if y'all know who Nancy Schaefer is. She was a Georgia senator. I'll send you her video. But her and her husband were murdered in 2010, and it was because she was looking at the foster system and what is going on in our foster system, because fathers were committing suicide because their kids were taken into care and adopted out. And I sent her, Nancy Schaefer, a video, and she went to a commissioner's office and she played this video for them. And I said, give him my number. She gave him my number. She's like, call this lady. She knows. And her case went her way. Thank God. She called me and was like, hey, we got the guardianship. So, I mean, there's things that you can do that it was like I empowered her, and she's like, I know I'm not crazy. This is happening. And yes, please, if you haven't heard of Nancy Schaefer, she was a Georgia senator who was fighting the foster system, and then lost her life in 2010. I'll send you that video too.
Yeah, that'd be great. So Karen says here, I think in South Africa, foster care places are horrible. Elderly children are raping the youngsters. They put 4-year-olds with 16-year-olds. So does this happen that when a child gets taken away from their family for whatever reason, does it more than not that they're put into a place that it's even worse than what it was with their own family? Like, do you guys are experiencing that's in a lot of cases that their foster home is worse than what it would have been like if they would have stayed with their parents?
Yeah, and I'll let KK answer, but if when a child is placed into foster care, they are 6 times more likely to die. And what she's probably talking about, when a child is sexually abused, a lot of these, especially sex trafficked kids, they become predators. So you cannot place them in another home with a sexually abused kid because they will be preyed upon. And so, yes, that is exactly what I found, was that I thought we were moving kids from an abused environment and placing them in a non-abused environment. But what I discovered is that even when they are abused, we are placing them in an environment that is most likely more abused. It's just a different type of an abuse. And they are 6 times more likely to die in care than out of care.
Wow, and your thoughts, KK?
Basically what she was saying, yeah, like a lot of the kids, when they were in their normal home before they got taken out, in the system, the kids are constantly in a fight or flight mode. So they're constantly trying to survive, and there's always fights going on, gang stuff happening, girls getting pimped out. There's always different things going on. And like I said, you're around kids from different backgrounds. So of course they're not stable how they were in a normal home before they got in the system, if that makes sense.
So you are, kind of who you surround yourself. So if they put
Yes.
these kids in with their, that could have been a normal, great, healthy child, you put them in a home that's got a lot of drug addicts, gangsters, hookers, all these kind of things from a young age, then it's more likely that this child that comes from a normal,
Yes.
relatively normal, environments and never seen any of that will now follow in those steps, because those are the children that they're around. They're learning it, they're seeing it, and some of the older ones are trying to pull them into that lifestyle.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right, because that ends up becoming the child's norm, because especially if they're going to be in the system for more than a year, it's going to be already like they're normal. It's not, they're already built accustomed to it. And like for me, I didn't really grow up around weed or girls getting pimped out or gangs or stuff like that, in my adopted family. I didn't grow up around that. I didn't really see it until I got in the system. But like what really helped me stay very grounded was my faith in Jesus and my support system. That's what really helped me stay grounded in getting out through the system and all the chaos that happened.
Yeah, that's very beautiful to hear. I'm so happy that you were able to stay grounded and you're able to come here and share with your experiences with us here today, KK.
Thank you.
She's very smart.
And so how did you two link up then?
I was the staff member at her group home. She came in at 15 at Elks Aidmore group home. I've told her this story. They actually briefed us on her and said that she was a runner, that we needed to watch out. And she came in late at night, and we were expecting this awful, defiant child because of the way that they had spoken about her. She came in smiling like she is now, and she wasn't defiant. She wasn't aggressive. It wasn't anything like they had told us to watch out for. She was running away because she was being abused. So I mean, you have that flight or fight mode, and she was in the flight mode, but I mean she was always pleasant. She was always compliant. She was always respectful. But that's the narrative that they build, right?
So now, is there any statistics on how many a successful or unsuccessful? So now if a child goes into the foster home, you said they're 6 times more likely to be suicide. So but what about getting into becoming criminals, becoming into the sex trade, becoming into is there any statistics, or do they try not to do statistics on this kind of stuff because it would show that them taking children away from their biological parents, no matter how bad the situation is, it actually becomes worse, because the kids now are either criminals, putting into this into the bad criminal lifestyles, or death, or all these kind of druggies. They get into a lot of them, maybe because of the trauma, because it's traumatic just even pulling the kids out. But there's probably more, less likely to be a successful child once
Yeah.
it's pulled out from their parents than there is a success story, right?
Oh yeah. I'll let you answer, and then I'll answer. Okay.
Oh, I mean, I was just gonna say, I don't know the exact statistics, honestly, but I will say it's very, very few that a child that has been placed in foster care, there's very, very low success rate of them, going through the whole system. But I'm just grateful to, be one of the few, and also getting out of it, but also giving back and helping the next generation, helping the next kids that are in the system now. So I'm grateful for that and the experience I went through so I can help the next people.
Well, I will tell you that according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and that's somebody else you should look into, they are, it's 86% of sex trafficked victims come from the foster system. Actually, it's 88%. So if you basically, if we abolish foster care, we could abolish sex trafficking, right? 88%. of sex trafficking victims come from the foster system. That is a huge number. And the reason for that is because of the policies and procedures that are in place for runaways. And this is something that we are going to be working on changing. We are already, if anyone in Congress, I've been trying to get in touch with somebody in Congress. Nobody will return my calls. Nobody will answer my emails. So if anyone out there, you see this, please call me. But the procedure for runaways, there are no Amber Alerts, there are no 911 calls, there are no missing reports. They are basically put on, you call in a police report, they put them on a BOLO, which is a be on the lookout for them. They are I noticed that if we didn't find the child within 2 miles of where they ran away, we didn't see them again unless they came back. And they usually came back because it was bad weather due to rain or cold. And then they might be trafficked and then they might come back then in a few days. But like even the group homes, they gave them 10 days to return and then they were taken off. The only person that has a list is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which lists them as runaways. It does not list them as missing children. And I have had children say that the foster parent would say, "Oh, I guess you're a runaway now," and they would put them out of the house, and then they would report them as a runaway. There's no oversight. This is simple procedure that we can help ensure that kids are safe. And so that's one procedure that needs to be done. And then the other thing is that children that age out of the system within 2 years, it's a foster to prison pipeline. They usually end up in prison or in jail, and that's because they grew up in a group home environment, which is basically a jailhouse prison structure.
Do you think that a lot of children, I think you believe that you said 88% of children, that the sex trade come from the foster care? Do you think a lot of them are sexually abused in the foster system, hence why it's so easy or natural, or that's the way they filter through the sex trafficking industry, because of the abuse that they probably faced while they were in the system?
Oh yeah, I mean, that was when I realized we had a sex trafficking problem, was working in the system. I was expecting kids that came in to be like 1 or 2 that had been sexually abused. And what I was finding was that if they weren't sexually abused or sex trafficked, same thing with the psychotropic medication. It was very few that were not sexually abused or sex trafficked that were coming in to the group homes.
Now, if a child is taken, and I guess it depending on age, but they get taken away from the parents for whatever reason, this is a traumatic situation for that child. It doesn't matter how loving or how hurt they were by the parents. No matter what, this is going to be traumatic to take a child away from what they know, no
Right.
matter what scale it is. Is there a lot of trauma counseling for that child? Is there a lot of support, to try to get them, to be able to manage this trauma? Or do they take them, put them into the foster care and, try to see them once a week or whatever, but there's not really that support structure, for them that you believe that, children should be getting if they are taken away from their, biological parents?
Yeah. Again, I think that goes back to your caseworker, and because it's really sad to see what these kids go through. It was the children that got to my heart because they would struggle with getting through a full day. I mean, just going to school and not acting out at school. Um, you have to put a lot of work into making sure the child has, if they have an IEP, if they will benefit from it, if you can get, you have to get so much help. And like even a behavior aide is basically someone that spends time with a child, right? That's really what they do. All of this has to do, and to break it down to the simplest form, it's the child needs stability, love, and nurture. That is what the child needs to grow and become a successful adult. But the stability is not in group homes. There are no stability. And a foster parent, I had more concerns than I had good foster parents. I will say that. You don't know what's going on in the house. You don't know what's happening when you're not there. You're only there for 30 minutes a month. That's it. Anybody can pretend for 30 minutes a month. In fact, when I started, I loved all of the foster parents. When I walked in, they were like, oh, we're going to do this for the child, and we're going to do this for the child, and we're going to do this. And then as I started working with them, if the child acted out, they were not required to go pick them up from school. In fact, I was the one that had to go pick them up from school. And I could have 3 kids acting out at one time, and I had to figure out where I needed to be to help in that crisis. And so the foster homes are basically, they're not homes, they're houses where they house the kids. That's what I called them, was houses, not homes. And that's because I had the kids the majority of the time, and they would ride around with me all day. They would go to court with me. They would go with me on visits. They'd sit in my office because they couldn't function at school. And then the foster parents not picking them up. And then some of the foster parents, they basically take them to school before and after daycare. So they're gone for 12 hours straight. So imagine, like, there's no, and then you have to listen to all these strangers tell you what to do. And then you just go home and you just go to sleep. That's it. So that's the problem, is it's not foster parents that, there's not enough good foster parents, is what I want to say. And they just are putting them through the system because because of the money involved. And I don't think we've talked about the money that these foster parents are getting.
So a lot of the foster parents, and I'm not all, I'm sure there's good foster parents out there that get into it for the right reasons, but in a probably a majority that you've probably come across, the foster parents, they're either doing it for the money, because there may be predators and it's an easy way to prey upon children and actually be protected by the system if they get into the predatorship. So what is it like financially for a family, or could it be a single mom fosters a child? Does it have to be a mom and a dad, or can it be like a mom and a mom, or is it could, so anybody can get, and what kind of financial incentive does someone get to foster a child?
Well, and this was where I was kind of surprised, because I always assumed that people just got paid like $20 a day, for a child, or, $10, $20 a day. But what I found out was when a child goes into foster care, the caseworker fills out what's called a waiver. And this waiver is based on the behavior of the child. So like this is where the behaviors come in, right? So a base child is a child that is not defiant, does not have sexual abuse, does not have trauma, things like that. with the Title IV funding, and this was Georgia. It's different for every state, every county, but it was $135 a day per base child, and then you're defiant, you're MWO, you're getting 200 if they're sexually abused, if they're special ed, if they have autism, any kind of medical stuff like that, you're going to get more. So the way that works is the placement agency would pay the foster parent. At the time it was $65 a day, and that would go up to $100 because these parents would negotiate and say, I'm not taking this child for $65 a day, you're going to have to give me $100 a day. And so if you have 3, and they were allowed to have up to 3 per home, so if you take 3 children and you do $65 a day times 30, I believe it was close to $6,000 a month.
Yeah, that's pretty. So at $100 a day for each one, so that would be, $3,000 a month for one child. So you're saying if someone took 3 kids and they were kind of at that, volatile state, that they could potentially get $100 a day for 3 kids. So they can potentially be getting $9,000 a month to take care of 3 kids full time. And they would maybe not even treat them very well, and it's more of the money thing for them. And that's how parents so you're saying some families get $9,000 a month for taking care of 3 kids.
Yeah, the majority of the ones that we had, it was about $6,000 a month, but that was more than what we were making. And it was that's not all of the money that they're getting. You're getting activity money, you're getting daycare money, which is called CAPS. Then you have clothing allowance, and then not only to mention the Medicaid and the Medicaid. So you have like 3 different funds that they're taking from. So they're taking from Medicaid for dental, vision, dental, all of their medical needs. And then you have activities, clothing, and the foster parent doesn't pay for any of that. Those are separate. So that's $6,000 or $9,000, whatever the foster parent is getting is the foster parents.
Wow. So what about the child? Are they ever listened to if they want to go back to their parents? I hate it here. I want to go back. Are there any cases or instances where, the system listens to the kid, and, honors their wishes to want to go back to the child?
Well, it doesn't go by if they want to go back. It goes by if the parent completed the case plan, then they'll go back. But a child cannot say, I don't like it here, I don't feel comfortable here, I want to go back to my home. That does not happen. And then this was another huge issue I had, was that the kids would say, I don't feel comfortable in this house, and I couldn't move them. Because I would call my director and I would be like, I want to move this child. They're not feeling comfortable in this house. And they would say, well, do you see a bruise? Do you see a mark? And I would look and I wouldn't see a bruise or a mark, but mental abuse you don't see. You only see physical abuse. And so then they would say, well, no, you can't move them. But now if a biological child, biological family, if a child goes to CPS and is like, hey, I don't feel comfortable in this home, they remove them automatically. But it is different in the foster system. And this was a huge part that really I struggled with. And that was because I would have kids saying, I don't feel comfortable here, I don't like it here, please move me, please put me somewhere else. And I couldn't move them. And that's why I started doing reunifications. I was like, I got to get this child home. I don't know what to do with this child.
Wow. So they're getting 2,000 to 3,000 per month. They're giving away, the state, whoever, that's usually between 2 and 3,000 per child. It sounds like, with the numbers that you were saying. Someone said here, but they can't give any money to the poor parents to help them out of any situation. They got money for yanking the kid out, but what about money to actually maybe help the family? Maybe they're financially struggling. Maybe there's other issues that are going on, they could maybe help them before they got all this money. So why don't they help them before they yank the kid out?
Because the state's not making money that way. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much you don't make money by helping the family.
So we had a comment here I wanted to get back to. I think it was JK here, Corinne. She says, and if the baby's run back home, the guardian is harboring a runaway. Absolutely heartbreaking. So if a child, gets pulled out, 12 years old, 13 years old, gets pulled out for whatever reason, they just want to be back home, and they hate it, they run away, they go back home. What happens, if the police come and that child is at the house and dated parents, or, maybe a single mom or single dad, and they just, the kid comes back and, oh, wow, you're back, little Johnny. And, now, the parent doesn't actually call anyone, and it's just, week goes by, 2 weeks go by, the kid is there every day, maybe going to try to enroll him back into school or something. And then they find out that the child that was taken away is now being taken care of by the parent again. What happens?
Well, I believe they get kidnapping charges. I've had a few parents that I was working with, and this is a lot of the Amber Alerts that you see, where parents are fed up and they're tired that they can't get their child back, and they take off running with the child. And then you'll see an Amber Alert that says, this child is in danger. I've had that happen a few times already, and the parents are in jail right now for trying to take off with their child. It's really sad, it's really devastating, because then these parents end up in jail, the kids end up in foster care, and then they don't get them back after that, because they've created that narrative where they are bad parents. And then they also put some really tough charges on these parents. A lot of these cases that I'm getting that are calling me, they put charges on them like rape and molestation, and then you throw a parent that was just trying to take off with their child with that narrative in jail, and then they have a tough time in jail because the jailmates think that they actually abused their child from molestation or rape. It's really horrific what is happening, but all of our systems were created for trafficking. All of our systems are created for trafficking, and I don't think that the system is broken. I think the system is perfected.
So do you think that then this system that we're currently living in, the matrix, the system that we are in, is built to provide sex trafficking, individuals, whether male or female, that somehow everything that's going on is looking to further the sex trafficking industry?
Yeah, it's $1 trillion industry. I'm told if we abolish CPS, cities would fall, because we are actually funding these cities through the foster system. And that's why everything goes back to the children. It's the children that we're trying to protect. and it's $1 trillion industry. And it's the saying is you can only purchase drugs one time, but you can purchase a child multiple times over and over and over. So yeah, it's awful.
Corinne is asking, has anyone heard of a foster kid being deported? So like in, KK's industry situation, or, say a kid was brought from a third world country at like 8 or 10 years old, brought over here and was just an absolute terror. Obviously KK, she's, very pleasant and, they didn't want to send her back, but in an instant, say there was just, have you heard that, a child is maybe got sent back to their own country because they just couldn't handle Western civilized life?
Not a foster child. I have heard of the parents getting deported, but the child stays here. And that again, like, why would they deport them? It's money. You can send them to another state. And that's another thing that happens with the foster children is that when they start, like if a child is struggling in Georgia and say they go through all of these group homes in Georgia and all of these different foster homes, they do a ICPC and send them to the next state, like Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, North Carolina, something like that. So, I mean, they're not gonna deport them because that would be a loss of money when you can just literally send them to the next state and get more money.
Now, I know that you guys are trying to help as many people as you can, as many, foster children, to give them a voice to the voiceless, and that's honorable and very commendable. So, tremendous work that you both are doing. So thank you from all of us here. What do you think can be done besides abolishing CPS? I know you said if they abolish CPS that things would be better, but what kind of things can we be doing as anybody listening that can help, this corrupted, inverted, perverted system, so we can make things better for future generations to come?
Contact your local, your local community, like people that can make a change. Because, like I was talking about the policies and procedures on runaways, why is that? Why isn't that changed? That's something that we can change that would actually help give oversight. And so, like, if you just start paying attention to who is in office in your local community, you can get involved with, we went to a nonprofit awareness and we met all kinds of people in our community, like the DA. We had a meeting with the DA of Walton County, and I don't know if you've heard about the two little boys that were adopted by the gay couple, and then they were sexually abused. And so that is my county, and we had a meeting with that DA and the people in his office to raise awareness and say that we are watching the system, we are paying attention to you, and what are you doing? You as in office, what are you doing to protect these children? And how were those two men able to adopt when they already had a background of abusing children? So how did that go unfounded, and why were they able to adopt? And start paying attention to the nonprofits in your area. The reason that we did choose a nonprofit was because that is who is controlling our system, right? Start paying attention to them and asking them, what are you doing to help your community? It doesn't take a lot to know that this is basically simple things that we can do to protect children. But get involved in your community. If you don't know how to get involved, you can call us and I'll be happy to tell you where to go and how to get involved. but that's kind of what we're doing. Grassroots, right? Grassroots is where we need to be.
Now, is there any safe houses for children that say they get taken out of from their biological parents or parent for whatever reason? It's not a good situation with them. They get put into the foster care. It's not a good situation. They're getting abused or whatever. Is there an actual safe place to take kids out of the foster system and put them in like a church? Or like, here is a comment by Michelle. She says, do you know of a lady who had a farm safe house in Florida for children rescued from sex trafficking? They made a movie and raised money for that safe house. Like, is there any ways that, if kids are, you have a corrupt county, or you got a corrupt state, or, your country is corrupted with this child sex trafficking everywhere through the system, is there any legal recourse to get them out of this horrific, foster care system and put them into somewhere safe?
Yeah, again, that goes back to knowing who is like doing your research on the nonprofits, like in Georgia. And I would like to hear more about the one in Florida because I'm not familiar with them. So I do try to find places like that and work with them. There's a place in Georgia called Bride. Let's see, is it Warrior Bride? But basically, they have like where they rescue sex trafficking victims. But that goes back to like getting to know your community, seeing who's in your community. And that's what we're basically doing is we're working with specific people that we're finding. So like the Warrior Bride is one. I have to think of some of the other ones that we have listed on our website. I think that we partner with, but that's basically what we're doing is we're trying to find other organizations that are wanting to help, and then partnering with them. Another one that we work with is called SaveOurChildren.org. They do really well with trying to keep families together and out of the foster system. So I can send you a list, and I think there's a tab on our website that says partners or partnership. Jay with CPS Investigation is another one that we partner with when CPS comes knocking on your door. So that's basically what we're doing is trying to figure out, who are the good guys and partner with the good guys.
Now, a question I have is, through this conspiracy stuff that I've been delving into for 30 plus years, there's been some organizations that have had, say, like the Missing Kid Foundation that is run by these pedophiles. So,
Yes.
and you have these missing kids, they have a foundation. Oh, yes, call us. But they do that in order to protect themselves from any information that's coming in that protects their little sex trafficking network. So you think it's a good organization, sounds good on paper, it's good, they make good commercials, they throw good parties, but what's happening behind the scenes is to protect this trillion-dollar industry. Have you heard about stuff like that?
Oh yeah. What I do when I start looking at a nonprofit is I go straight to the board. I look and see who's on the board, and who they're connected to. This is how I've been able to because you're right, and we have been so blind to this for so long that they've gotten away with it. There was an organization in Georgia, and I forgot the name of it. I'll have to look it up. But when I pulled up the board of directors was a judge, a sheriff, a DA. It had senators on there too. It had senators. It had real estate. Um, so you really got to look at the agency, see who they are. If you go to our show, our podcast is Insight. This is what we do. One of the episodes on there, it's Daniel. Oh God, what is his last name? He was one of the first ones, but he was a foster youth that contacted me, and it was the sheriff that was harassing him. And I pulled up the sheriff, and the sheriff had a nonprofit. And then I pulled up that nonprofit, and there was another nonprofit linked to it. And I started looking at the board of directors, and I was like, okay, everybody's connected to this thing, but why? Why do they need all of that, right? They're already in the system. He's a sheriff. And they had actually created a CPS nonprofit that did exactly what Child Protective Services does. Why do they need that? Right? So this is, you can go through a lot of our episodes. That's basically what we do is we go through these and we analyze it, and it's usually from calls that call me and say, I need help. And we're trying to figure out how to help them, basically.
So what can be done by this system that, you got this organization that got judges and DAs and sheriffs, and obviously it sounds very corrupted. It sounds like they got a little piece on every single part of the pie in order to keep this thing flowing. So how can an organization that, looks, and you could probably even find evidence of it being corrupted, how can it be stopped, or how can it be made to light that they can't continue on hurting children this way?
I think it goes back to the people. I think the people have been ignorant, and it's our job to let the people know what's really going. I honestly, when I realized what the foster system was like, I was like, if people knew what was happening, they would be furious. They would be pissed off, and they would stand up for the children. But I think we're making headway now because of podcasters like you, and that are raising awareness on the system. But honestly, I believe that it's the people that are going to make a change. And it's going to be all of us coming together. It can't just be 5 or 10. We need millions, and we need them to come forward, and we need them to stand up for the children. And then that's also going to stop all of this corruption. But I mean, just to show you an example of that is anybody that's watched the Britney Spears conservatorship. They basically took her kids from her. They worked her. Her father was a conservator. It was a conservatorship over her, but it was the people. It was the people that stood up for her, and they got her conservatorship changed. And it wasn't, if it hadn't been for her fans, she would still be in that. So I believe that we can take from her story and we can change the system, but we really need people to start telling, hey, I saw this podcast, passing it around. It's word of mouth, but it's coming together, and it's grassroots, but we've really got to get the people together.
I just wanted to point out Shan's comment here because, there's good people in the system as well. So she's saying, just as one, I've taken in over a dozen kids over the years to save them from the streets and predators. They've all graduated, became grateful, successful young adults. We can all do a little something. It takes a village. And there's good people. There's good people in the system, in child CPS that, like with Sylvia, that gets kind of, pushed out the door. There's good foster parents that, we're not talking that this is all child protective services are bad, all foster parents are bad, but in essence, there's a big problem. And
Yes.
children are being hurt, children are being trafficked, children are being abused, children are being taken, probably, not correctly from their parents, in a lot of these situations. Because do they try to find, if they take a child from the parent or parents here, in I know in my province they try to place it with a family member first before they put it into foster care? Or because it's such a business where you guys are located, they don't even really care about trying to put it into another family, that they're just looking straight to put it into foster care because the money behind it?
Yeah, that's a huge problem, is that they are supposed to go to the family first and ask family members first, but that's not happening. Uh, I don't know if you're familiar with the Family First Act. Um, it was actually Trump that put it in 2018, and that is supposed to give funding to the family when a child is taken into care, so that the family can keep the child. And then states were able to say yes or no if they wanted to do the family first, but uh, Georgia is one of the states that has Family First, and there are a lot of good people in the Family First Act uh, that I've met. So that's one way.
Joyce is asking, what is your opinion of John Walsh taking his daughter's children away and getting them into sex trafficking? Have you heard about
So
that?
I am actually the advocate for Megan Walsh, and I took her case because I wanted to see if Megan was legit. And I wanted to see if what she was saying was legit. I can't talk about the case because she's gagged order and we're gagged order. I will tell you that she is legit. That's all I can say. And that's one reason I would say that you should start looking at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And you really should start supporting Megan Walsh. She does. She needs our support. She needs our help. But unfortunately, I can't say anything about the case.
So this thing that Trump put in for, Family First Act or whatever it was. So you see this was a good thing. It's just it wasn't adhered to or followed in the right way. Is that kind of what you're thinking about it?
Well, the way the system is they corrupt everything, right? Because it was a good thing. I do remember when this went into effect, my directors freaking out and talking about how this was awful. And I was like, how can this be awful? They're giving families money to help. That's going to keep kids out of foster care. Well, I didn't realize it was bad because it's keeping kids out of foster care.
Bad for business.
It's bad for business. But what they've done, and you have to think with a criminal brain. So what they're doing is they're using the family to take kids, right? So they're using the family to get the funding. It's another form of trafficking that they have manipulated.
Now, I know you guys are kind of new, you've been kind of in the system, but what is the whole new gender bender thing doing, allowing, foster or allowing CPS to come in and take kids because their parents don't want them to have these operations or give them these, sex altering drugs? Has this just opened up a whole new can of worms for parents to kind of have to be afraid of, how they respond to their child being groomed into these gender bender, crazy, psychosis what's going on these days.
It's another way to trap it.
Yeah.
And I'll let KK tell about her experience, because the LGBTQ community is pushed by the foster system, and that has always been pushed on the kids. It's just that it's more prominent now. It's more like it's on steroids almost. But what I think that people need to realize, and this is something that I realized recently, is that this is all satanic. So the reason that they're pushing this agenda on these kids to change from boy to girl to boy is because if you know anything about the devil, he doesn't have an agenda, right? And all of this is basically to their god, the devil. So all of what we're seeing is satanic, and we really do have to start saying we don't agree with this, because they're harming kids, they're mutilating kids, and I think people do need to understand how the foster kids are pushed, and they are the ones that are being experimented on. And KK can talk a little bit about that.
Well, I know, like, just from a few experience from the system, that especially like when you're in an all girls group home or an all boys group home, you're basically around the same sex pretty much every single day. So I believe and also just the environment is so like toxic and negative, and I mean, I'm being honest, like demonized in a way, because there's so much darkness in there, that I just believe that they push it on the kids to, like each other and things like that. And I had an incident where a girl would try to, she liked me and try to confuse me and things like that. And I'm like, but I came back to reality. I'm like, no, I can't do that. That's not what's happening. And it's just easy to get into the manipulation of lies, because it's just like I said, it goes back to your normal. When you're around females all the time, you're not really around the other sex. That kind of tends what is going to happen is that.
So is there any instances, KK, like that you know of in the group homes and stuff where children would just go missing for 4 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours? They would take them, they would come back, they'd be quiet, and like visibly like something may have happened to them. They may have taken, like, did you maybe notice this throughout the years that, this is strange that, sometimes, and did they ever try to do that to you, take you to these places and do certain things that you may or may not wanted to do, if you feel comfortable in sharing that, if it did happen?
Well, I know, like for me, it didn't really happen to me like as much. I mean, the only thing that did happen was, we would leave the cottage, like the facility. We were still on the campus, but we would leave our house, like, I don't know, it's not a house, cottage, and we just go up to like the field and like smoke or something like that. But I never was in situations where they would try to take me and put me in a situation where like people were getting abused or sex trafficked or anything like that. But I did see, I remember one of the girls from my placement, she was in one of my classes when we were in high school, and then she stopped coming. But we realized that one of the girls that were on campus pimped her out and took her with them to run away. And she ended up coming back. I don't know exactly how, but I'm just grateful she was able to come back, make it back safe, because most girls, they don't come back to the facility. There were some cases where girls ran away and then they came back. They were quiet. Some tend to run away because they wanted to go smoke, or they wanted to go hang out with their boyfriend or something, like whatever case might be. There's different situations, but I did see that a little bit.
We have a question here. So is it true they made sure the foster kids are updated on all of their shots, even against their parents' will, or the kids get taken away because the parents refuse the shot? Did you guys have heard of situations going on that, say biological parents, healthy, happy child, and then all of a sudden, next thing or maybe there was a mother and a father split up. One wants them to take the shot, the other one doesn't, and then the kid's taken away from that parent that doesn't want to have them injected with some of this stuff?
Well, at the time when I left, the pandemic had not happened, but the kids are taken into, when they come into care, they're taken straight to the doctor, and they're vaccinated. Their records are pulled. If they're not vaccinated, they're automatically vaccinated. And there's actually, if you look up Rachel Bruno, her two kids were taken, and the first thing they did was they went and they vaccinated the kids, both of them. And one of them, she did not believe in vaccines. She did not want her kids to be vaccinated. And they gave one child like all the vaccines at one time. And so she did end up, it was a long battle, but she did get her kids back, and she sued CPS, and she actually won. And you can look her up. She's somebody that we partner with. It's Rachel Bruno, Bruno. And she does have a book. She has a website, and I think she just started a nonprofit.
Oh.
Go ahead.
I wanted to say something real quick. So I was I was still in the system when the pandemic happened. So I had a hearing when I was with my foster parent. That was the last place I was at after the group home and everything like that. There was basically I said I'm not going to take the vaccine because I don't believe in it. And they would try to say, well, if you don't take the vaccine, you're going to get your placement removed. And I'm like, but why do I have to get a vaccine and then get my placement removed? And so they would try to throw that at the child. So me per se,
Intimidate, fear.
yeah, they were trying to, but the thing was, I wasn't backing down. Like the judge was like, well, I don't have no sympathy for you. I don't feel sorry for you. And I'm just like, I understand when you're in court, you have to be very respectful, but deep down, I had to just like calm down and be like, oh no, I'm not going to say nothing destructive or nothing. But I was not backing down. I'm like, no, it's my right. I don't have to get a vaccine if I don't trust it. And, my foster parent, she worked with me, which I'm thankful for that. She was like, well, just wear a mask. And I mean, I'll be honest, I was also against that too, but that was better than getting a vaccine at least. So, but that was just my story on that.
So you were able to say no, and you never had to get this thing injected into you that I never did. And I know a lot of
Yes.
people listening here never did, but you were able to not, they couldn't force this into you. And you
Yes.
were how old were you at the time?
I was like, what, 21?
Yeah,
Right
it was
before, this was right
her
before I
recent.
aged
It
out.
was the most recent.
Yeah, the most
And
recent.
you did lose that placement, didn't you?
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is it wasn't because of the vaccine though.
Oh, okay.
But they were trying to use that as a way to
Leverage to convince you, that to try
yeah,
to manipulate you
yeah,
into getting this. They use fear, intimidations, they use all these tactics and
yes,
against children that are just learning the world and to be intimidated. I'm sure a lot of them, succumb to that intimidation. You were strong to be able to stay to your, to your will. And, congratulations, kudos to you for being able to do that, because I'm sure not a lot can
well,
handle that kind of pressure.
well, I mean, I'll be honest, at the end I did cry, of course, because I was like really upset with them. But in the court I had to be strong, so I was like, no, I'm not gonna cry right now. I'm gonna get through this, do all that other stuff later, but get through this part. So I had to really stay strong in that.
Well, good for you. I'm proud of you. So,
Thank you.
that's super awesome, because the pressure that everybody was facing, for anybody that was able to withstand this last 3 years without injecting this stuff into them is, like something to be proud of. You, every single one. If you chose and you wanted it, hopefully that, it didn't turn sideways like it has for many people. But for anybody that was able to stay strong, it's definitely, was the biggest psychological operation in the history of mankind, is to get this into people. So for you to be at such a young age and to be like that, you should be really proud of yourself for not succumbing to it.
Thank you.
We've got about 5 minutes left. Is there anything that either of you wanted to share? Any story, anything for the audience, anything that you guys wanted to that maybe we didn't cover here yet today?
I wanted to say something. So going back to what Sylvia was saying, like how we can get people involved, just bring up small conversations. Like when I'm at my job, I just bring up a little bit about, hey, like, do you know about this? This is what's going on in the foster care system. Like I just try to have small conversations with people and talk about it, spread awareness. Of course I don't force the conversations, but I will still bring it up and things like that. And then also at 7:30 today we actually have a podcast. It's on Insight. And if y'all want to watch it, y'all can. It's on Rumble and Foxhole. And also if you would like to, you can donate to on Cash App at Rescue the money sign Rescue the Fosters too, if y'all want to.
Okay, I'm going to put all those links back, and there's the links in the description that you sent. Here's to their website. They can find all this information on your website as well.
Yep.
And for you, anything that we didn't cover here, Sylvia, that maybe you wanted to, share with us here today?
I mean, there's so much to the foster system. We could talk for weeks, but I think we covered like the main parts of the foster system and what is wrong with it and how it can be changed. And I think if everyone can get involved in their community, if you are having problems like figuring out how to get involved, you are welcome to call me. I put my number out there. Um, and you can email me. I know you have problems with the email, so I have rescue the foster at Gmail. We do have that one too, rescue the foster at gmail.com. And you can email me as well. But yeah, if you have any questions, if you want to say, hey, how do I get involved? This is not, KK and I can't do this alone. We need people, and we need people to come help, and we need people to volunteer, and we need people to raise your voice and research, and yeah, so just reach out.
Okay, awesome. And you have a Facebook page as well, because Sandra says Miss Beachy is on everything but Facebook, but you are on Facebook, right?
Yeah, we are. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
yeah, we're on
they make it difficult to find us on Facebook. We are on Facebook. Yep.
Okay, well, thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you.
Young ladies.
Thank you.
This was awesome to be able to just,
Thank
ask
you.
you some questions. You're welcome. And to be able to just pick your brains and, make light to this dark,
Yes.
issue that's been going on. And, that's the time. This is the time to, to bring, light to the darkness, right? We need to start exposing these, evil things that are going on in this world, because we can't just, close our eyes, pretend, and sing kumbaya and think it's going to go away.
Right.
Because, we need to come together as community. We need to come together as people. We need to, stop this madness that's, poisoning, not only, everybody, but the children. Like how good are we if we can't protect our own kids? So thank you for all the hard work that you guys are doing, and KK for being such a strong warrior, going through the system and just, saying no to what you didn't believe in. And that's just a strength of will, and everybody that you come into contact with for the rest of your life is going to be able to benefit by you standing your ground and becoming the true soul that you're meant to be here. So good on you there.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're very, very welcome. And Sylvia, great work for you standing up to the system, being in the system that wanted you to just go along with that corruption. And because you do have your moral resolve, you do have integrity, you chose to get turmoil, because I'm sure it wasn't easy having to stand up to this big bad system. And you were able to stand up. It pushed you out, but it's probably better that you got to be in, learn about what was going on, and then come out, and now you can help a lot more people now because of it.
Awesome.
Yeah, now you can help so much more people because of it. So awesome. Well, may the source be with you both, and God bless, for Jesus, and for having that strength and resolve for you, KK. I loved hearing you say that. That was very powerful. I'm Jesse Howell, your host here at The Missing Link. We're just trying to bring as much information about what's going on in this world to as many people as possible and educate anybody willing to listen. So thanks for all your likes, comments, hearts, shares, and stars. We appreciate all of your love and support. Please share this important interview out. And if anybody can donate to their nonprofit, either financially or with time, because you're looking for more people to help. And, maybe you're not in a position where you can, help financially, but maybe you can spend a little bit of time. Maybe you can get some information from them and help in your own state or in your own country, the same thing, because this needs to be looked at. This needs to be helped everywhere, because I'm sure there's not really many places on earth that we're not dealing with this same type of corruption.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you again. Thanks, KK. Thanks, Sylvia. This was great. Thanks for just, sharing your guys' info. I'm Jesse Howell. We got 2 missing links tomorrow. We're going to be talking with Elizabeth Monroy in the AM. She's a world traveler, wrote a book called The Infinite Human, helping people to find their true powers. And then we're going to be talking with Dr. Kent Hovind. So I'm not sure if y'all know him, but he's a very, he debates the God, and he says God is time and space. And you'll see him on lots of TikTok clips. But they railroaded him and they put him into jail for like 7 years, called it for tax evasion, because he was reaching too many people with his way he could talk about the God and the Bible and all these different things. He's against creationism, and he now is speaking out again. He went to jail and he actually was talking to all the inmates, so they had to keep moving him from jail to jail because he was turning them all back to God. And they actually had to put him on some island somewhere for his last part of his sentence, because they didn't even want him near anybody because of how powerful of a soul he is. So not sure if people know the name, but once you see the face and hear him talk, you'll see. I've seen him on TikTok clips because he's been taken out of context. So I'm really excited about, this interview tomorrow. But as I am about all the interviews, but this one's a little extra special because, I think he's a brilliant man. So thanks again. You all have, may the source be with you. May protection be around you. May you help as many people as possible. And may we all fix this corrupted system so we can finally, take care of our children, and, just start the healing process to get us back to where we're supposed to be as people.
Yes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye, everyone. We'll see you back tomorrow next time we see you on